Hello family, welcome to Stories by Tochi. We bring you interesting folk tales. Please subscribe and drop a like for us. This generosity would go a long way for us. Also share to family and friends. And please turn on post notification to stay tuned for more. Thank you as you do so. Now let's get into the story. Jennifer's life in Enugu moved like the soft rhythm of a jazz tune playing through a dusty speaker on a sleepy Sunday morning. The city was noisy, yes, but her corner of it, her rented three-bedroom flat tucked off Basala Road in Independence layout, was calm enough to hear yourself think. She had crafted a space of warmth within the brick walls. Cream curtains framed fabric art, houseplants that obeyed no rules but grew all the same, and the subtle aroma of lavender oil that floated in the air like perfume from a gentle ghost. She liked her peace, and more than that, she guarded it. Her studio, House of Oma, stood just across town, on the ever-busy Ogbani Road, where traffic and life danced together in that chaotic harmony peculiar to Enugu. Her name had started to carry weight, not just among clients who came with sketches on napkins or dreams of magazine-worthy wedding gowns, but also among local tailors who spoke her name with the quiet admiration you reserve for someone who came up without stepping on necks. Jennifer hadn't always had it easy, but she didn't wear struggle like perfume. She let her work speak. But even success, as she had learned, didn't shield you from betrayal. And before betrayal came knocking, it often sent a friend ahead to make you feel safe. Angel was that friend. They met the way many great friendships do, randomly, awkwardly, and at a time when both women were standing on the brink of something new. It was at a NYSC orientation camp in Bauchi, under the suffocating sun, both of them queued for a plate of watery jollof rice and burnt meat. They clicked instantly. Angel was loud, dramatic, funny without trying, and had a smile that lit up rooms, and sometimes distracted from the storm in her eyes. Jennifer, in contrast, was composed, reflective, often quiet in rooms full of chatter. But something in Angel's energy drew her in, and before long, they were sharing everything: drinks, secrets, clothes, and grief. After service, they both returned to Enugu. Angel got a job at a popular beauty salon in New Layout, and Jennifer opened her studio with a little loan and a lot of sleepless nights. They remained close through the years. From roadside suya dates to midnight sobs over failed talking stages, Jennifer had held Angel's hair back through heartbreak, and Angel had run up and down Enugu General when Jennifer's mother was sick. She called her sister, and she meant it. Not in that casual, surface-level way women toss the word around, but in the way that says, "If you fall, I'll stretch myself thin to catch you." When Ebuka entered the picture, it felt like the missing piece had arrived. He wasn't flashy. He didn't speak too much. He didn't pretend to know everything. That quiet confidence, the way he listened with intention, made Jennifer lean in. They met at a regional youth fellowship event. Nothing romantic at first, just polite greetings and a shared laugh over stale chin-chin and a power outage that disrupted the projector. It started with text messages, then weekend strolls, then hours-long conversations that drifted from childhood stories to future plans. Jennifer hadn't been looking for love, but it found her anyway. In Ebuka's patience, in his calmness, in the way he spoke Igbo with an effortless depth that made her feel safe. He was a civil engineer, recently transferred from Port Harcourt to Enugu for a government project. It wasn't long before he became a fixture in her world. Her staff knew him. Her neighbors greeted him. Even the little suya vendor across the street once said, "Madam, this your Oga look like husband material, oh." But most importantly, Angel liked him. That mattered. When she introduced them at a quiet birthday dinner, Angel hugged him like they'd known forever, said with a wide grin, "Jen, this one fine, oh. You really outdid yourself." It was innocent, or at least Jennifer thought it was. Angel even helped organize the proposal months later. She picked the rose color for the decor, helped Jennifer get her nails done that morning, and screamed the loudest when Jennifer said yes. But behind the screams, the hugs, and the camera flashes, something had already begun to shift, and Jennifer, in her bliss, missed it. It's funny how the heart hears what it wants and ignores what it doesn't. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a flurry of lace samples, body fittings, and vendor drama, but Jennifer noticed little things. Like how Angel would stare too long when Ebuka spoke, or how her questions about him grew oddly personal. What's his love language? Has he ever cheated? Do you think he's completely over his ex? The kind of questions that float harmlessly when asked once, but start to itch when repeated. Jennifer brushed it off. It was Angel. She'd always been the curious type, dramatic, the one who always asked questions others were too polite to ask. But what Jennifer didn't know was that Angel had begun texting Ibuka in secret. What started as jokes and playful banter in group chats became private messages. Then compliments. Then blurred lines. Jennifer had no clue. In her mind, her best friend and her husband were part of the same family portrait. No sharp edges, no betrayal. She didn't see the danger because her heart was full of trust, and she believed, foolishly perhaps, that love alone was enough to protect her from shadows she didn't know existed. In the end, it wasn't blindness that destroyed her world. It was trust misplaced in the wrong hearts. And once broken, some truths cannot be reassembled, no matter how carefully you gather the pieces. The wedding day arrived on a morning that smelled of ripe fruit and new beginnings. The sun had woken early, casting golden stripes across the rooftops of Enugu like God was personally lighting up the day just for them. Jennifer stood in front of a mirror in her auntie's house in GRA, clad in the soft white silk of her wedding robe, her natural hair woven neatly under a silver-studded hairnet, eyes staring at her own reflection with the kind of disbelief that only joy could bring. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with a strange mix of gratitude and quiet awe. It wasn't just that she was getting married, it was who she was marrying. Ibuka had shown up in her life and rearranged the way she thought about partnership. He wasn't the most expressive man, but the way he did things, thoughtfully, intentionally, spoke volumes louder than the sweet nothings many women had learned to grow tired of. As her makeup artist dabbed her cheeks with blush, Jennifer's phone buzzed again and again. Friends, vendors, old classmates, even distant relatives she hadn't heard from in years, all calling to say how stunning the venue looked, how they couldn't wait to witness her become a wife. It felt like her world was aligning. But even in the middle of that joy, Angel was on her mind. She hadn't arrived yet. She was supposed to be there before everyone. She had Jennifer's shoes, her jewelry box, and more importantly, her emotional support. Jennifer checked the time, feeling a small twinge of concern in her chest, but brushed it aside. Angel had always been last minute. She would come. Angel eventually arrived an hour late, but looking flawless and glowing as ever. Her hair was styled in soft finger waves, and her burnt orange satin gown hugged her figure like a second skin. She walked in laughing, apologizing for the delay, saying something about traffic and how the makeup artist at her salon disappointed her. But Jennifer noticed something different, just for a second. Her hug was tight, but her eyes were unreadable. Not cold, not warm either, just somewhere in between. That space where truth goes to hide. Jennifer didn't think too hard about it. Not today. Not on a day that had been planned down to the last petal. The ceremony itself was held in a chapel that smelled of roses, polished wood, and old hymns. The pews were filled to the brim. The choir's harmonies hung in the air like sacred perfume. Jennifer walked down the aisle to the sound of violins playing a gentle instrumental of Onyeka Kaji, her steps measured, her heart steady, her eyes fixed on the man she believed God had chosen for her. Ibuka, standing at the altar in a sharp gray agbada embroidered with gold thread, looked like a man who had never known sorrow. His eyes lit up as she approached, and in that moment, she saw everything she had ever hoped for. Beside him stood his best man, Chike, and on Jennifer's side, Angel stood in her bridesmaid sash, holding the bouquet with a smile on her face but her grip too tight, her knuckles whitening slightly under the silk gloves. The vows were said. The rings were exchanged. The kiss was met with thunderous applause. Cameras flashed. Mothers cried. And in the sea of celebration, no one noticed the slight glance that passed between Angel and Ibuka just after the officiant announced them husband and wife. The reception was a dazzling affair held at an event center in Independence Layout with high ceilings and air conditioning, so powerful it made the jollof rice go cold. The hall was decorated in soft whites and golds, with giant screens playing clips of the couple's pre-wedding shoot, showing Jennifer in red chiffon by a waterfall and Ibuka holding her waist like he had been doing it all his life. Guests filled every table, friends, family, business clients, church members, old lecturers, even that Annie who never called unless there was money involved. The music was loud but classy. The food? Too much. The couple danced in, escorted by traditional dancers who sprayed them with white powder and ululations. Everyone cheered. Jennifer's joy could not be contained. She danced like a girl who had survived fire and come out glowing. Ibuka's moves were stiff but endearing, the kind of steps men do when their suit is tight and their heart is full. An Angel, she danced like a woman possessed. Her gown shimmered under the lights, her hips swayed too freely, and when she held Jennifer's hand during their shared bridesmaid-bride dance, her grip lingered, tight, almost possessive. She whispered something into Jennifer's ear that made her laugh. "I told you he was a catch," she had said. But her eyes weren't smiling. They were studying him, observing every movement, every touch. She wasn't just watching Jennifer's marriage unfold. She was taking mental notes like a spy. At one point during the night, Ibuka had excused himself to take a call. He was gone longer than expected. Jennifer went to look for him, but saw him returning from the side hallway, phone in hand, looking mildly flustered. "Just work stuff," he said with a quick kiss on her forehead. She believed him. Why wouldn't she? When the final round of photos were taken and the cake had been sliced into tiny white triangles with buttercream roses, Jennifer found herself sitting in a quiet corner of the hall, barefoot now, her heels abandoned somewhere beneath the table, her makeup slightly smudged but her spirit completely full. Angel sat beside her, one hand swirling a glass of Chapman, the other playing with the hem of her dress. "I'm proud of you," she said without looking at her. "You did it. You really did." Jennifer turned to her, eyes soft, voice low. "We did it, Angel. You helped me through everything." And she meant it. Angel had been there when she cried over a tailor that disappointed her a week before the wedding. Angel had fought with the caterer when they tried to change the menu last minute. Angel even paid for Jennifer's bridal shoes when her account hit zero the night before the final fitting. She had shown up, fought hard, supported loudly. But beneath all that loyalty, something else had taken root. A quiet envy that had bloomed slowly over the years and now lived like a ghost beneath her beautiful smile. Jennifer couldn't see it. She didn't see how Angel's eyes followed Ibuka when he walked past, or how her hand brushed his arm unnecessarily during a group photo. She didn't feel the undercurrent. Love, in its purest form, had made her blind. And because Angel had been with her through the rise, Jennifer never once imagined she'd be the architect of her fall. Trust, after all, is often planted in familiar soil, where betrayal grows best. The first 3 months of marriage for Jennifer felt like walking through a freshly cleaned room barefoot, soft, light, unbothered by the usual weights of adult life. Waking up beside Ibuka, sharing Sunday mornings cooking yam and egg sauce in matching aprons, kissing in between conversations about light bills and grocery runs. It all felt easy, like something that had existed forever, but was only just discovered. She'd often watch him from the doorway, fixing his belt, adjusting his shirt collar, rubbing cream into his hands absent-mindedly, while glancing at his wristwatch. There was something about the way he carried himself that still made her stomach flutter. Ibuka was a calm man, predictable in his habits, careful in his words. He didn't overcomplicate love. He'd come home tired and still ask about her day, let her rant about stubborn clients or broken zippers, and sometimes just listen quietly, nodding with soft eyes. Jennifer cherished those little gestures. But as the honeymoon glow began to fade and life returned to its natural rhythm, she began to notice subtle differences. Ibuka, who once couldn't go an hour without texting her, suddenly forgot to call till late in the evening. His presence remained, but emotionally he was beginning to feel like a photo frame, still silent there but not engaging. She dismissed it at first, blaming work pressure, adjusting to married life, even fatigue. But deep down, a quiet voice had started whispering, "Something is off." Jennifer had always believed that relationships didn't crash like buildings in a storm. They cracked quietly, one hairline fracture at a time. And though she didn't want to admit it, those cracks had started showing in the silence between their conversations, in the sudden secrets that Ibuka's phone seemed to keep. She noticed how he no longer left his phone on the bed, how his screen now faced downward, even when he wasn't using it, how he started stepping out to take calls, claiming it was office gist, or just Chike being a fool again. The problem wasn't just the secrecy. It was the difference. A man who used to send midday photos of himself eating umla with ogyuf soup now barely replied her messages until evening. One night she asked, in a voice too soft to sound confrontational, "Are we okay?" He smiled, that tired smile that felt more like a cover-up than a response, and said, "Why wouldn't we be?" And she nodded, pretending the answer calmed her, even though it didn't. Angel, in all this, remained distant, but not too distant. She came around sometimes, still loud, still funny, still acting like everything was fine. But there was something theatrical about her now, like someone performing the role of a best friend rather than living it. She no longer called randomly to gist about her salon drama. When she came over, her eyes always lingered too long on Ibuka, her laughter too loud when he cracked dry jokes. Jennifer began to see, though she wasn't yet ready to believe. Enugu itself began to whisper. The city that once celebrated her union with Ibuka now handed her subtle warnings, little remarks from familiar mouths that made her chest tighten without warning. One evening, while waiting for her Bolt ride outside the market, her cousin Amarachi casually said, "I saw Ibuka last weekend. I think he was at Spring Valley Hotel. Looked like he was in a rush Shah." Jennifer's stomach turned, but she smiled and said nothing. Amarachi didn't mean harm, and besides, hotels weren't only for cheating husbands. He could have been meeting a client, supervising a renovation. Jennifer made herself believe it, but the seed had been planted. Days later, a former classmate who worked at a laundry service dropped another seed. "You know say I day wash cloth for plenty people, but now your husband day bring him shirt come every Thursday. One time, now one fine girl even drop him. I think say na him cousin." Jennifer laughed it off, even made a joke about it. But her laughter was hollow, like clapping hands in an empty room. Her mind refused to let go. And still there was Angel, calling once in a while, telling her about her new clients, about her boss traveling, about life. But never asking too much about Jennifer's own. Their friendship had become a cold room. They were still inside it, but it no longer felt warm. Jennifer told herself she was just being paranoid. That marriage was just harder than she expected. That Ibuka loved her. And Angel would never hurt her. Not Angel. But the body always knows when the soul is being lied to. Jennifer began to feel it in the tightness of her chest whenever Ibuka's phone buzzed past 10 p.m. In the weight of Angel's hugs, which now felt rehearsed. In the way her instincts screamed silently, while her mind tried to reason everything away. One night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan as it spun in lazy circles above her. Ibuka had dozed off beside her, one hand across his chest, phone clutched in the other. She slowly reached out to take it, not to snoop, not to accuse, just to feel safe again. But he stirred suddenly, and tucked the phone under his pillow. Jennifer turned away, eyes open in the dark. She didn't cry. She didn't ask questions. Instead, she thought about how strange it was, this feeling of being alone beside the very person you married. Days turned into weeks, and the emotional distance widened. Then came the message, one that would change everything, but not yet. Not that night. Life, as it does, sometimes takes its time before delivering the blow. And Jennifer, still clutching to hope like a fabric too fine to tear, had no idea she was sleeping in a home where loyalty was already dead, and betrayal had made itself comfortable on her couch. The evening it happened was ordinary in every visible way. The rain had fallen earlier that afternoon, leaving Enugu's streets glistening like they'd been polished by regret. The air smelled of wet sand and roasted corn, the kind of scent that brings nostalgia you didn't ask for. Jennifer was home, folding fabrics in her small workspace, humming absent-mindedly to Ace's Bibank, playing softly from her Bluetooth speaker. Ibuka had mentioned he'd be home late, again. A site meeting, he said. She didn't argue. Her patience had become a habit, her silence a shield. As she worked, her phone buzzed, a message from Angel. The first in almost 2 weeks. "Hey babe, just thinking about you. Miss your gist," it read. Jennifer smiled faintly, thumb hovering over the keyboard. She started to reply, "Miss you too." Been swamped with work, but paused midway. Something in her spirit hesitated. She couldn't place it, but lately, every time Angel texted, she felt a strange discomfort, like sugar poured into water that refused to dissolve. She deleted the message and locked her phone. The night deepened, electricity flickered and died as NEPA surrendered as usual, and she decided to charge her own phone with the small power bank. Ibuka's phone lay on the table, screen glowing faintly as it charged from the generator connection. Jennifer reached for it to call her mother, innocently, without suspicion. But destiny, sometimes cruel in its timing, loves to speak when you least expect it. The message arrived like a slap wrapped in velvet. She hadn't meant to read it. She didn't even realize the screen had unlocked until the notification expanded, and her eyes caught the words that sliced through her like broken glass. "I still feel your hands on me. Last night was everything. I want more of you, Ibuka." For a second, Jennifer thought her mind was playing tricks. The name on the message glared at her like a taunt. Angel. The same Angel whose laugh had once filled her living room, whose tears she had wiped with her own hands, whose secrets she had kept as though they were sacred relics. The room fell silent. Even the generator seemed to hold its breath. Jennifer's hands trembled, so violently the phone almost slipped. Her heart was beating too loudly for her to hear her thoughts. She read it again, slower this time, and each word grew heavier. Every letter screamed betrayal. The world she had built on trust began to crumble, quiet but complete. Her first instinct wasn't to cry. It was disbelief, a desperate need for logic to undo the pain. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't her angel. Maybe this was some cruel prank. But then she saw the thread of messages above it. Heart emojis, private jokes, affectionate nicknames she had never heard from her husband's mouth. Every doubt she clung to evaporated in the heat of realization. Angel hadn't stumbled. She had crossed a line. Ibuka hadn't tripped. He had chosen. The walls of her marriage, once solid, now felt like cardboard under rain. When Ibuka walked in later that night, still in his sight clothes and smelling faintly of cement and rainwater, Jennifer was seated in the parlor. The phone rested quietly on her lap. The lights were back on now, soft and yellow, casting shadows that seemed to mock them both. He stopped at the door, froze, his eyes darting from her face to the phone, and something in his expression changed. He knew. Without a word, he knew what she had seen. "Jennifer," he began, voice trembling slightly. She didn't answer. She simply raised the phone, the screen bright, displaying the message that had ripped her heart open. His lips parted, his throat worked like he was searching for words that didn't exist. "It's not what you think," he finally managed, a weak, worn-out line that sounded rehearsed, almost pathetic. Jennifer's voice was low, steady, stripped of emotion. "Then tell me what it is." He took a step forward, hands raised like a man pleading with a ghost. "I didn't plan it. I swear, Jen, it just happened. It didn't mean anything." She laughed softly, a bitter sound that didn't match her tears. "Nothing just happens, Ibuka. People make choices. And you chose her." The silence that followed was so sharp it could have cut through stone. He tried to touch her, but she stepped back, shaking her head. No more words came. She left the room, moving like someone walking underwater, slow, heavy, numb. She didn't pack anything. She didn't yell. She just walked out barefoot into the cool night air. The streets were wet and quiet, puddles glistening under the flickering streetlights. Her tears came only when she reached the main road, her chest heaving, her breath unsteady. She stood there for a long time, watching the city she loved move on, unaware of her pain. A taxi driver slowed beside her, asking if she needed a ride. She nodded, climbed in, and gave her aunt's address without thinking. Her mind was blank, her body hollow. At her aunt's house, she didn't say much. "You're here late," her aunt observed, half asleep. Jennifer only managed a small, trembling smile. "I needed air," she whispered, heading straight to the guest room. When she finally lay on the bed, her hands found her wedding ring. She slid it off slowly, placed it on the nightstand, and turned her face away. Outside, thunder rolled faintly, like the sky was mourning with her. But Jennifer didn't cry again. She simply stared at the wall until morning broke, feeling nothing and everything at once. That night, her world didn't end with noise or violence. It ended quietly, with the click of a phone and a truth too heavy to unsee. Jennifer stayed in her aunt's house for days without counting them. Time lost shape when pain stole its rhythm. The room smelled like coconut soap and powder, calm, homely, nothing like the chaos sitting quietly in her chest. Mornings came and went like shadows on the wall, and she moved through them with the grace of someone holding herself together with invisible thread. Her aunt didn't ask many questions. She just watched her, sometimes placing bowls of food beside the bed and removing them untouched hours later. Jennifer barely ate. Her stomach was always full of ache, her appetite missing in action. Her phone rang constantly, Ibuka's name lighting up her screen like a haunting. She didn't pick. His texts followed next, first gentle, then pleading, then long, messy paragraphs filled with broken sentences and regret. "Please, Jen. I know I hurt you. I know I messed up. But it was just a mistake. You're my wife. Don't let this be the end." She read them in silence, sometimes multiple times, but never replied. There was a numbness in her that didn't crave revenge or confrontation. Just clarity. She wasn't looking for him to suffer. She only wanted to understand why someone who claimed to love her could so easily walk into betrayal with the same feet that had once walked her down the aisle. And then, in the middle of one afternoon when the sky outside was unusually dark, a new message arrived. This time, not from Ibuka, but from Angel. The message was long and came without any greeting, like shame itself had typed it. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," it began. "I swear, I never planned to hurt you. It just happened." Jennifer read each word slowly, her hands cold, her heart holding itself still. Angel confessed it all. How it began with harmless compliments and flirty jokes. How one night, after she had helped Ibuka organize a surprise for Jennifer's birthday, they had stayed behind to clean up and shared a drink. How the conversation that night drifted from Jennifer's dreams to her flaws, and how Ibuka had opened up about things that made him feel unseen. Angel wrote about how she didn't mean to get attached, how the secret texts began to replace her loneliness, how she started to believe that Ibuka had fallen for her too. She claimed it wasn't meant to continue beyond that one mistake, but it did. It stretched across months, behind Jennifer's back, beneath her roof, while she planned her marriage and called Angel her sister. "I wanted to tell you so many times," Angel wrote near the end. "But I didn't know how. I was scared, then greedy, then lost." The message didn't ask for forgiveness. It only said, "I know I've lost you forever, but you deserve the truth. I'm sorry. For everything." Jennifer didn't cry. She stared at the screen for a long time, then locked her phone and sat in silence. There it was, confession served cold. Not by a stranger, but by the person she'd trusted with every hidden corner of her life. Something inside her shifted that day, not just anger or betrayal, but an odd stillness that felt almost like freedom. She went into the bathroom, washed her face, and looked at herself in the mirror. For the first time in weeks, she saw herself not as a wife or a victim, but as a woman who had survived a war she never prepared for. She touched the dark circles beneath her eyes, the small bump on her chin that came from stress, and told her reflection, "This is not the end of your story." She knew people would talk. Enugu had ears and lips that never slept. Already, whispers had started floating into her inbox, some sympathetic, others nosy, a few pretending to check on her while fishing for gist. She ignored them all. Her story didn't belong to gossip. It belonged to her, and she was going to write the next chapter on her own terms. That evening, she responded to one message only, her lawyer's. She asked about the steps to legally end the marriage. It wasn't a decision made in anger, but in peace. She wasn't interested in public fights or social media clapbacks. She just wanted out. Quietly. Cleanly. Permanently. The ring remained on the nightstand beside the bed, untouched. She didn't need a dramatic moment to throw it into the gutter or flush it down a toilet. Let it sit there. Let it witness what dignity looked like. Ibuka showed up 3 days later, unannounced, as if physically presenting himself could erase what he'd done. He looked tired, his beard slightly overgrown, his voice strained with desperation. Her aunt let him in with a frown and a warning. Jennifer stood by the doorway of the living room, arms folded, her face calm. He tried to speak, but she raised a hand. "Don't talk," she said, her voice steady. "Just listen." And for the next 10 minutes, she poured out her heart, not in anger, not in insults, but in raw, quiet truth. She spoke about the pain, about the night she found the message, about the weight of silence she had carried. She told him how she felt small, invisible, and foolish for loving so blindly. "You didn't just cheat," she said. "You destroyed something that took years to build. And worse, you destroyed it with the one person I trusted most after you." Ibuka's eyes were glossy, his hands trembling. He reached for her, and she stepped back. "Don't," she said, gently but firmly. "I needed you to hear me, not touch me." He began to beg again, all the usual lines, all the apologies layered with explanations. She listened, then shook her head. Some things once broken stay broken, and some doors once closed should never be opened again. With that, she turned and walked away, not out of spite, but because she had nothing left to give. That was the day she stopped being someone's wife, and started becoming herself again. Time didn't heal her, it simply passed. The first weeks after the divorce moved slowly, dragging themselves across her skin like rough fabric. Jennifer had returned to her flat in Independence Layout, the same place she once decorated with hope and rose petals, but now stripped of sentiment. The walls were the same, the curtains untouched, the smell of lavender oil still faint in the air, yet everything felt different. Emptier, heavier, quieter in a way that wasn't peaceful. She walked from room to room like a stranger renting space in her own life, adjusting to the silence that now filled the spaces where laughter used to live. She didn't rush to redecorate or erase Ibuka's presence. She left his side of the wardrobe open and untouched, not as a memorial, but as a quiet reminder that even love with structure can still collapse. Clients still came to her shop, and she smiled at them, measured their waists, nodded at their compliments, and never once showed them the grief hiding beneath her foundation. It wasn't pretense, it was survival. In a city like Enugu, strength was often measured by how little you revealed. Jennifer learned how to sit across from married women without feeling bitterness, and how to hear wedding plans without flinching. Her pain had become disciplined, contained, folded neatly inside her chest like a garment she wore under every outfit. Angel disappeared from her life without a farewell, and Jennifer didn't chase closure. There was no confrontation, no physical fight, no dramatic fallouts that usually follow betrayals between women. It ended like a candle snuffed by its own wick, quiet, final, senseless. From gossip she overheard at the tailor market, Angel had left Enugu for Abuja. Some said she found work at a bigger salon. Others said she was trying to start over after the shame followed her like a bad smell. Jennifer didn't care enough to find out which was true. She had no interest in rereading a chapter that had already wounded her. She blocked Angel's number, not from rage, but from the wisdom of knowing that some wounds should never be reopened just to confirm they still hurt. As for Ebuka, his efforts to win her back were loud at first. Calls, texts, emails, even a handwritten letter delivered by a bike man. He spoke of redemption, of therapy, of a second chance. But Jennifer never responded. She didn't need to. Her silence became her answer, and over time, even he began to understand. The calls became fewer, the apologies shorter. The silence between them grew until it became the only thing left they shared. Jennifer didn't hate him. Hate was too emotional, too active. What she felt was something colder, quieter, indifference. He became a memory that didn't deserve to be relived. Life, eventually, began to make space for other things. Jennifer started volunteering at a community arts center in Accra Layout, teaching teenage girls how to sew and design. It wasn't part of any grand healing plan. She just found that giving her time to others filled the void that heartbreak had left behind. Watching those girls laugh over crooked stitches and mismatched threads reminded her that creation was still possible, even after ruin. She began attending small art exhibitions and music nights, not to meet anyone, but to feel the rhythm of the city again. She changed her morning routine, started walking down to Polo Park with her earphones in, letting soft music and fresh air anchor her to the present. She reconnected with old friends, not the ones who only showed up when the story was juicy, but the ones who asked how she was and actually waited for the full answer. Slowly, like a woman building a house from scratch, Jennifer started choosing what she allowed back into her life. Not everyone, not everything, just the things that didn't come with noise or weight. Her heart hadn't forgotten, but it had learned to breathe again, to beat without begging for someone else's rhythm. She still believed in love, but now it came with boundaries, questions, and silence long enough to hear the answers behind someone's words. One morning, a young bride-to-be walked into her shop, bright-eyed and clutching a sketch of a gown she had seen on Instagram. She was bubbly, loud, asking 100 questions at once. Jennifer listened patiently, offered fabric suggestions, and marked her measurements with steady hands. As she wrapped the tape around the girl's waist, the client paused and smiled. "Auntie, you look like someone who's been in love before," she said, half joking. Jennifer smiled too, not bitterly, not sadly, just with the quiet dignity of someone who had bled and lived to tell the story. "Yes," she replied softly. "I've been in love. And I've also learned that not every story needs a happy ending to be worth telling." The girl nodded, not fully understanding, but sensing the weight behind the words. That evening, after closing the shop, Jennifer walked home without rushing. The streets of Enugu pulsed around her, the Kiki horns, the smell of Accra frying by the roadside, the voices of hawkers chanting prices like songs. It was a city that moved forward, with or without your permission. And she had learned to move with it, not as someone broken, but as someone rebuilding. Her joy now was quieter, but firmer. Not loud laughter, but deep peace. She unlocked her door, stepped inside, turned on her favorite jazz playlist, and stood in the middle of her living room with no one watching. No ceremony, no applause. Just a woman who had lost, healed, and returned home to herself. Not everyone who claps for you loves you. Sometimes, the loudest cheer comes from the one holding the sharpest knife behind their back. Guard your heart, but don't let it harden. Learn to see beyond the smiles. Love deeply, but never forget to love yourself first. And when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. May your heart never be handed to someone who doesn't know its worth. May the love that comes your way be honest, gentle, and loyal. May God remove anyone planning to smile at your front and stab you from behind. May betrayal never find comfort in your circle. May you have the wisdom to walk away when something no longer serves your peace, and the strength to heal without bitterness. May your tears turn into testimony, and may joy meet you in the places you least expect. In Jesus' name, Amen. Hope you enjoyed this interesting story. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Turn on post notifications. See you on our next story.